Hey guys, Dantix here, back with another Wonderlands video. The Clawbringer is a class that looked amazing when first announced, but in practice is very hard to build in a way that just works. Call me Todd Howard though, because I've found a build that works in Chaos 20 and, most of all, is fun to use without too many requirements. The unfortunate truth is right now the Clawbringer relies on mechanics that need a buff, as it's simply too effective to follow a build like this one, and anything else seems to feel a little slow in comparison. However, if you like using pets and specifically getting the most pet damage possible in the game, like punishing your foes for daring to hit you or them, love the flexibility of using any elemental damage, and being the perfect partner in co-op, this is the build for you. It's not as straightforward, but damn, it's fun. You'll be throwing out your Storm Hammer to buff your damage output, but recalling it straight away to drastically reduce its cooldown. Meanwhile, your pet Wyvern will be attacking everything in sight, and your Mushroom will be keeping enemies off you. Your Wyvern is able to solo lower chaos levels on its own without you doing a thing. Everything hit by your hammer will take an extreme amount of bonus damage, and it just so happens you have the power of the elements, and anytime you kill, you send out fire orbs that also prime the target for that bonus damage. That's not all, you take reduced damage from all sources, and anytime an enemy hits you or your allies, they take 20% back as lightning damage, which yet again sets them up for a huge bonus damage boost. With your ward, you'll also be reflecting bullets back, and your armor makes it so your health gets multiplied into a ward, making the reflection happen more often, altogether making this quite an effective Thorns build. You'll also be buffing your allies, including friends, in multiple massive ways. The best news is, you don't have to use the gun liquid cooling to get to Chaos 20. Here's footage of me using the Rogue Imp, and this build isn't even refined. For example, I'm using an amulet that rolled frost damage instead of fire, and my rings aren't gun damage, but more focused on companion damage. The conclusion is that you can make the Clawbringer work, and work well, making it probably one of the best partners to have in co-op. Let's get right into it. You can either pick the Clawbringer or the Spore Warden as your primary, though I'd recommend the Spore Warden as there are a lot more viable builds with them right now. Both classes bring with them a pet, the Mushroom Companion for the Spore Warden and the Wyvern Companion for the Clawbringer. Because of this, we're able to buff them both up considerably with skills and items. The Wyvern definitely being the best overall pet out of the three that are currently in the game when invested into. It has scaling damage output, can send out fire and lightning bolts, and benefits from all the Clawbringer and Spore Warden buffs. The Mushroom doesn't quite dish out the damage, but can definitely take it, helping you group up enemies and distract others. It also will revive you when you're down. The ability we'll be using is Storm Dragon's Judgment. You throw out a hammer and it sticks to what it hits, dealing lightning damage around it for a short time. You can recall it early and a portion of your cooldown is refunded. That's the main reason for using this ability over the other three. Cleansing Flames will do a lot more damage comparatively, but the idea is our ability is there to proc all of our after ability effects and coat targets with Wrath of Nature. Barrage can also be used if you simply want to maximize Wrath, but I personally prefer the hammer. Heading over to the skills we need, we can go down a tree in any order when you're leveling. I personally chose to head down the Clawbringer first though, because it's more exciting when leveling up. However, the Spore Warden has the more core ability, Wrath of Nature. Right now, it seems a bit too strong, and most Spore Warden builds will utilize it in some way. When you deal ability damage to an enemy, they take 54% damage increase from all sources. That means you, your pets, your friends, and even traps. You'll be throwing out your Storm Hammer often, so your targets will take this bonus damage, but you'll also be priming your enemies in other ways. The first with Rebuke, and the second with Blastamut's Favor. But first, let me run through the abilities in order. First up is Kindred Heart. Max it out to give your companions a sizable chunk of extra health and damage. Without this skill, you'll noticeably see your pets dying quite often, but with it, very rarely. Then you want to pick up Bullseye. For 5 points, it gives both you and your companions a 50% critical hit chance increase. I don't need to explain why this is nice. Then we have a choice. Do we focus on more guns, or do we focus on pumping up our ability damage? Affinity would pump up our ability damage by 35%, which would boost our Storm Hammer, our Rebuke damage, and the orbs from Blastamut's Favor. But this isn't our primary source of damage, so I personally opt for Eagle Eye so we get a nice 20% damage increase. We won't pick up Bounty of the Hunt because we only need to throw out Stormhammer for the buffs and debuffs, and recalling it early is a low enough cooldown, though this is something you can play around with. Next we get 3 points in Thrill of the Hunt. We want to stack companion damage because why not? So gun critical hits will increase companion damage up to 90%, not bad at all when combined with Kindred Heart. Then we want our Mushy to be able to revive us but also taunt enemies, so pick up Medicinal Mushroom followed by Spore Cloud. This should give us the magic number in order to get Wrath of Nature. Max it out quick smart. We now do a bonus 54% damage to anything that takes ability damage. Pop on over to the Clawbringer tree and max out Oath of Fire. Now both you and your Wyvern will deal bonus fire damage. Next, maxing out Dragon Aura will make you and your allies, including your pets and your friends, deal 20% extra elemental damage. Pick up Blastamut's Favor, which makes it so when you kill an enemy with your gun or your Wyvern kills them with a breath attack, it summons a fire orb that seeks out an enemy for fire ability damage. This primes them for the Wrath of Nature bonus. You won't be meleeing often, but if you do kill an enemy that way, or if your Wyvern does so with its claws, it'll send out a lightning orb for lightning ability damage. Then max out Rebuke. You'll take 15% less damage from all sources, but all your allies, including you, reflect 20% damage they take back as lightning damage. So this primes enemies for Wrath of Nature. Are you seeing how this is all coming together? So either they get hit by your hammer or they die and prime their friends, or they hit you or your allies and they prime themselves. Whatever they do, they lose. Then you want to give your faithful Wyvern the Firebolt attack, which benefits from all the fire and elemental boosts. You'll also get an 8% increased gun damage. Then give him Storm Breath, which also benefits from the elemental damage boost. This skill also gives you a further 12% damage reduction, putting it up to 27% damage reduction from all sources thanks to it and Rebuke. Finally, dump the remaining points in Friend to Flame. It increases your Wyvern's damage output by 100% with 5 points. I'm there because I get +2 from my gear. With this, Kindred Heart, Bullseye, Thrill of the Hunt, Wrath of Nature, Oath of Fire, and Dragon Aura, your Wyvern is super jacked, able to take on lower Chaos levels solo, and able to keep up with you on Chaos rank 20. In terms of attributes, you want to first pick Village Idiot as your background for that +8 strength, and then max out Dexterity. We want to be critting to proc Thrill of the Hunt and increase our companion damage stacks. We don't need to invest in attunement, even though it seems like we want to throw out our hammer more often. The cooldown we have without investment is sufficient, and our points are better spent in strength, which we max out. Then we have a choice, more tank or more damage. If you want the tank, go for Constitution because it boosts you up quite significantly, but I personally have opted for Wisdom for more damage. In terms of items, I'm far from optimized. I keep finding items for other classes and have been quite unlucky with the Clawbringer. However, you want to pick up Clawbringer power over Spore Warden even though you don't see that on mine, as your Wyvern is more important to buff up and it increases Storm Dragon's Judgment as well as Blastamut's Favor and Rebuke. You aren't looking for particular items, rather you're looking for enchants. In particular, you want to look for action skill start enchants. On the Liquid Cooling, for example, I get 20% damage dealt on action skill start. I'll run through what I'm using and explain how it could be better. I have a low tier Liquid Cooling for when I feel a bit lazy on the bosses and because my amulet rolled with a frost damage increase. However, you don't need this weapon for the build, it'll just make it easier. I've been using any powerful fire weapons like this Rogue Imp. It sends out flying firebirds when it overheats. It could use a better enchant similar to the one on Liquid Cooling, but I don't want to use the moon orbs on this badly rolled weapon. Then we have the Bread Slicer for shields. Remember, frost, fire and lightning all benefit from elemental boosts. Our melee weapon increases fire damage after casting a spell, but yet again, could be better. Ability start is the best for us. Then our rings. I chose to further boost the damage of our companions, but you immediately see the problem here. The build isn't focused. Do we want to focus on companions? Do we want to focus on elemental damage, our own damage, gun damage? I recommend you make the choice because I certainly haven't. Realistically, we get more from just pumping up all things gun damage, but where's the fun in that? My amulet, for example, is here for its buff, making it so when we kill, companion damage is further buffed by 20%, stacking up to 100%. It also increases frost damage. I wish it rolled with fire and Clawbringer power, but beggars can't be choosers. Then for spell, we're using the buff Meister simply because it increases damage dealt by 15% on spell cast. There are other enchants that seemingly do more, but usually say when action skill is active, and we want to be recalling our hammer rather than leaving it out. When action skill is active, increase fire damage by 50% or companion damage by 50%, both being huge, but they only would last for a short window with this build. The other option is on action skill start, increase gun damage by 40%, but the buff master gives us bonus fire gun damage, which we boost with our skills, so I just like it better. Then we have our armor. It increases the effectiveness of our pets, and this one increases all damage dealt as well as gun damage, as well as reducing ward recharge delay, which is good because it puts our health to 1, increasing our max ward up a crazy amount and further reducing our ward regeneration delay, making us ultra tanky. The reason I picked this up was because of the way it works with our ward trick mirror. You see, it has a 75% chance to reflect bullets and arrows back at attackers and enemies while your ward is not depleted. If it ever is, you die. It also increases regeneration rate and your maximum health, which turns into a boosted ward. The armor and shield work together perfectly for this Thorns-like effect we have going on, so the build title wasn't lying. This is an elemental damage companion Thorns build. There is a lot going on. So how does this build play? Very simply, you want to be opening with your Storm Hammer ability, then instantly recalling it. This will set off your multiple buffs and debuffs. You can then use your spell or start shooting, buffing up your already buffed Wyvern and Mushroom. You want to share a focus with your pets and function as a team, bringing down targets together. Don't forget you can ping enemies to direct your Shroom. If you're playing with teammates, stay close and be sure to coat enemies in your magic Wrath of Nature juices. Put it all down, melt their faces, and don't be afraid to take some hits, since those hits will bounce right on back to your lowly enemies, or pop it on Chaos 1 and watch your Wyvern have all the fun. So that's Wildfire, a build that will hopefully spark your love of trying new things and enjoying the game in different ways. Let me know below what you're playing and how much fun you're having. For everything RPG, you're in the right place. Ciao.